As most of you know, my name is Ezra Smith, and this summer, all by myself in that boat, with the things on that table, and the food over there, I paddled the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. Okay, we'll do that later. So the maps, you probably saw over there, but this trail goes from Old Forge, New York, all the way up to Fort Kent in Maine. And it goes through 4 states, 1 province, in Quebec for a little bit here. 22 rivers and streams, 56 lakes and ponds, and at least 62 official portages, which totals 55 miles. You'll notice that the mileage is in parentheses here is different than 740, and that's because unlike a trail that's on land, when you're on a big lake, there's no trailblazers. There's no saying you go this exact way. You may go this way, you may go that way, and so the exact mileage will be different for every person. And in the same way, some places I had low water, like the South Branch of the Dead River, and so instead of 55 miles, eventually it got bumped up to 130 miles that I covered overland. All of this was under my own power. So I used the pole, I used the paddles, I carried the canoe, or I put the canoe on the cart that's over there on the table. You'll see a picture of what that looks like in a moment. Elevation. Start way up in the Adirondacks. There's the highest point, Brown Track Inlet, and then you go down. That's the Saranac River. That's a wild ride. To Lake Champlain, up through Vermont, up through New Hampshire and Maine until you get to Rangeley, and then pretty much downhill. So I had lake travel, I had upstream, I had downstream, and overland. This is a very diverse. And this is, you'll notice the sunburn. This was after I was done. And I had the maps laid out there for you, but this just gives you another sense of what it was like. When I unfolded these at Christmas time, that's when Mom was like, "Oh, you're going far." I was like, "Yeah, it takes up like the whole living room. That's how far." But before I went, I had to make the boat. I did not build this boat for this trip, but it turned out to work perfectly. Wood canvas construction. The pack over there on the table, nice patina compared to this. I put the pockets on, and traditional wood, canvas pack worked really well, assuming that you were okay with dealing with the weight like I was. That's what it looks like when I'm wearing it. Getting through doors is a bit tough. Or some trees sometimes. You know you can fit through there, but you've got 6 inches on either side of you. I had to carve the paddles and the pole, which are over here. And I'll talk to you about the pole a little bit later on, but if you've never pulled a canoe, I highly recommend it. It will totally change the possibilities. Look at that smiling face. You can tell this was before the trip. You know, short hair, clean shirt. You can still make out the camouflage instead of it being sort of a general brown color. Brand new varnish. So we drove off to the Adirondacks, my parents and I. These are shot on a film camera, almost all of these, and there was some issues at various points, so there's going to be some strange artifacts. And some areas I didn't have, I couldn't take any pictures at all. So there's some things like that. 6 o'clock, June 18th, ready to set off. The Western Terminus in Old Forge, New York. So each pin represents a night. In this first segment, this whole segment is what I did in New York State, and then I passed out of New York State up there at Lake Champlain. Day 1. You'll notice the different colors. So this light blue is lake travel. This yellow is portaging using the wheels. And this orange color is carrying the boat and the gear separately. And the green is downstream. The magenta, which will crop up at some point, is upstream. So, lots of lakes. And I was being chased by thunderstorms. Check the forecast before I go. Monday, thunderstorms all day into the night. Do I start? Don't I? I did. I'm glad I did too. They missed me. They went to the north and south of me. But it was very windy in my direction, which let me go as far as I did. If you've ever wondered what it looks like under a wood canvas boat while you're portaging, this is it. I saw that a lot. I spent a lot of time staring at all these ribs and, oh my gosh, wait a minute, that one's totally put in wrong. Well, that's too twisted. How could I miss that when I varnished? Things like that. This is familiar to at least one of you in the audience. This is put in to Brown Tracks Inlet. This was where I had just come up through some lakes, and now I'm passing over the highest point and about to descend into a different watershed. This is a picture from later, but you can see this is what it looks like with the card. Card on the bottom, pack right on top centered, and then I could stand back here and lift ever so slightly and walk along the road. Day 2, Racket Lake, very, very windy. Portage, more lake travel, downriver. I had done, we're getting close to a section that I had done before, which was very nice. And in this windy lake, Needle Island, oh, thank you so much. It's kind of hard to see, but it's very, very, very windy over here and calm over here. And it's like a 10-foot wide island. So I managed to hide in that wind shadow on my way through. It doesn't work. At least not when I was there. I didn't have any coins, but I had a long-distance calling card. I pick it up, there's no dial tone. There's power, but there's no dial tone. I try all the service numbers, try all the 1-800 numbers. Didn't work. I was very disappointed. I'd read about it in the guidebook. I was looking forward to it. Day 3, still in the Adirondacks, long lake, very long lake. One of 3 long lakes / ponds that I would go through on this trip. Down the Racket River, around Racket Falls, to a lovely lean-to. I left early in the morning, and very foggy and calm on the water. It's hard to make out, but if you've ever wondered what you do on a long portage when you're carrying a canoe and have to put it down, this is what I did. You go along with the canoe and you find a nice forked tree, and you put that bow right in there and slowly lower down until the stern touches the ground, and then you get out from under it and take your bag, which would be right there, and do the next leg, and drop the bag, come back to the boat. Hope that on your way back it hasn't blown off. It just happened to me more than once. All right, that's the Racket River. Now this carry right here is really interesting. This, as I was talking with one of you, all that I'm doing is not new. People have been traveling these routes for thousands of years. They've been using them for trading, they've been using them for migration, they've been using them for war, all sorts of purposes. And so this is known as Indian carry. And this is the border between a watershed that goes this way to Tupper Lake, and a watershed that starts up here and comes this way and goes down toward Lake Champlain on the Saranac River. And so this was the closest point between those 2 watersheds, and so they've done archaeological digs there, and they found artifacts from trading from thousands of years ago. Very cool. Here's the head of that carry. And here's what it looks like in some places of the Adirondacks. A lot like Maine, but still beautiful. Bulrushes. is Middle Saranac Lake. My first rapids of the trip, class 2. Significant drop with a big rock at the bottom. And just got some water in the boat, missed the rock. I don't know if you noticed that the tags on the maps over there are different colors. And I should have mentioned something. The different colors represent how far I went before a resupply. So this is day 5. I went 5 miles and met up with my trail angel, Teresa, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast right there in Saranac Lake Village. Going down some locks early in the morning. The person who, the lock keeper was not there, so I got to turn the handles to let water in and close the gate and all that. There's Teresa with the vegetables that I requested and the coleslaw that I requested. She's like, what do you want me to bring? Do you want me to bring like any sweets or anything? Vegetables, lots of vegetables. And I think I ate all of that before we moved from that spot. So after spending a night there, I continued on down the Saranac River, downstream, and then Franklin Falls Pond and Union Falls Pond. Beautiful lakes, oh my gosh. Union Falls Pond might be one of my favorite bodies of water from the whole trip. About to leave Saranac Lake Village, new t-shirt. Yeah. Let's see if I can get the video part to work on this. So when I was going down the river or up the river, I used the canoe pole a lot. Oops. And I have some questions from you about how to use it, so I figured I'd just show you a video. This is me. I'm up in Maine at this point. So if that water up ahead had been deeper, I could have continued to pull up. I was getting out because I was going to need to push it up. So a wonderful skill. Anybody, those of you on YouTube, anybody who's going to do the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, especially by yourself, definitely learn how to pull and bring that.
Ezra?
Yes?
Why did you pull versus paddle?
It was too shallow.
Okay.
Also, if I'm paddling, I'm pushing against the current, which is going behind me anyway. So you can imagine I would need to paddle. It's not so significant in here, but if I was out there, I'd have to paddle really hard to get any headway. Versus the pole, I can just push off the bottom. Okay. Probably the saddest part of the trip for me happened this day. Busy road right here, 55 miles an hour. And there's a steep embankment here. And I saw a young deer grazing along the edge here. And I realized too late what would happen as I approached. So the deer saw me, spooked, ran up the embankment, and I heard a slam. So the next picture is of that scene, just forewarned. It's not too bad, but I felt I had to put that picture in here. Okay, it's over. It's a good picture. All right, the next day, my first significant wheeling portage. This one was 6 miles, 5 or 6, I don't remember which. And now we're starting to get into where there's a lot of rapids. Things are starting to get exciting. Morning, Union Falls Pond, gorgeous. The only selfie. I didn't want to try too many in case the camera broke from looking at me too much. Now the place I stayed that night was at 41 Soper Road, which there's somebody there whose contact information I got. Craig Van Bergen, I think his name is. And he's a Northern Forest Canoe Trail river steward for this section. And so, out of the blue, I dropped in because I didn't have any cell phone reception and was like, hey, can I stay at your house, camp in your yard, and also can you drive me back to get the zip-off pant bottoms that I left 3 miles behind me, which would be a 6-mile walk to get back to where I was. And at first, like, you know, here's this guy, he didn't call, but, you know, but they were so kind, and they understood exactly what I was going through. They drove me around, gave me pizza, showed like, hey, you're going down this part of the river, that's where you want to look out for. You know, they say to go that way, don't go that way, go that way instead. So it was lovely to stay there. And I got my first tear. Right there. That's in the pack over there. So I spent the evening fixing that up. But that's the great thing about canvas. With this speedy stitcher right here, you've got a tear, and if you have a scrap of canvas, you know, you're set. Good as new, just a little heavier. And the last day in New York. Downriver, portages, downriver. You know, the map said for this 6 miles of continuous rapids. I was like, what? 6 miles of continuous rapids. Yeah, right. It was 6 miles of continuous rapids. Easy rapids, but you know, around the curve, you know, oh, there's more white water. Around the next curve, oh, there's more white water and more white water. It was really fast. That's why I was able to do 25 miles that day. I got to where I was going by 4 o'clock. Cool penstock portaging around. I think that's what you call that. An old breached dam. This is the day of dams. Imperial Mills Dam right before Plattsburgh. And Plattsburgh's kind of cool because it's basically rapids through the city, and there's forests on either side. So it feels kind of like you're out in the wilderness, but you're actually in downtown. There's the wave that I tried to surf because I was about to take out, and surfing by yourself in a canoe, standing up, it's a little hard. So I flipped, and I got out. And wheeled over to Betsy and George's house. These are 2 Quakers that I got in touch with that day. They're like, hey, I'm going to be in Plattsburgh, and is there anybody in your meeting that could, you know, have a yard that I could pitch in or something? Because there's no good places to stay. And they're like, well, you can stay with us. So I got directions to their house and wheeled through downtown Plattsburgh. That must have been funny. That thing's really awkward to handle on sidewalks. Right angles, crosswalks. You know, you're coming around a building and you're in the back, but the point sticks out. You know, you don't know what's around there, so then you go up to the front, but then you can't, yeah. I left some paint on a phone booth. Segment 2, across Lake Champlain and up the Missisquoi River. Day 1, or day 9, just lake travel, lots of lake travel. It was a little windy, not too bad. Open. Not a lot of boats out, which was nice. Not a lot of power boats, I mean. The wind was in my favor. I stopped by North Hero Island. On my way, picked up some postcards. You know, I didn't talk to many people that I knew on the trip, but I sent a lot of postcards. And so I kind of felt like I was having a conversation with my friends, even though they had no way of getting back to me, you know? Just telling them stories as I went. All right, day 10. I woke up and it was very windy. So technically you're supposed to go, or the official route is to go this way, up to this delta, and then up the Missisquoi. But I was, you know, it was raining and it was very windy, and so I decided to play it safe and portage along here until I got to the river and then went up the river. I don't know which one was, the portaging along that road was, I think, just as scary as it would have been going along. But, so very choppy, very windy. This is where I finally sat all the way in the back, and the bow was way up, just so that the wind would point me the right direction. This is the shoulder I portaged along. It's like 18 inches, 2 feet wide. The boat's 3 feet wide. These cars are going 50, 60 miles an hour. There's lots of big trucks. It was nerve-wracking. This man's name is Mario. He lives in Quebec, and which is right next door at this point. And he was on sort of a long-distance bike trip, just kind of around for a week, and so it was nice to meet a fellow traveler. In Swanton, Vermont, this is a memorial to, let's see, I'm going to try to do my best here, the legend of the Abenaki, who were in that region, that at the end of time, the creator would paddle around the waters of New England in a stone canoe. And so this was sort of a representation of that. And my boat fit perfectly in that. All right, this is one heck of a day. 12 miles, but serious upstream stuff going on this whole time. This is about 3 pictures before I drop my camera in the water. It'll get progressively worse. There's an inflatable dam here, which is like a huge inner tube that had gotten a hole in it. I could have told you that would happen. So they had to let all the water out while they replaced it. So instead of paddling on a reservoir, I got to paddle on a river that hadn't existed since the 90s. You can kind of make out, here's the water. You know, the water is normally almost up to where these plants are, and it's dropped way down. So I got some bonus rapids, spring rapids that hadn't been there for a while. Yeah, what? Yeah. Right after this picture, I dropped it in. This is from Maine, but this is just a sense of one way to get stuff up the river. You'll see the water's deeper here, and it's shallower here. And so I have 2 ropes going out, one to the bow and one to the stern, and I'm angling it in the water so the canoe will actually shoot up this way, while I walk parallel with it. So this is called tracking. I loved it. All right. The day before was also the first tear that I got in the canvas. More upstream travel, some portages. Not much to say here. I don't have any surviving pictures. More upstream travel, a little bit more portages. And this is in Richford. Yes, that's the name of the town. And I stayed there one night, and then a second night as well, you'll see 13 and 14, to meet with my resupply angel, Teresa. And then, the next day, I got to go into Canada. The normal route is to continue this river, which is going like this, the Missisquoi. But this border crossing was closed last summer. So that meant that I had to tack on a 7-mile, I think it's 7 miles, additional portage on these roads to get through that border crossing. So that was interesting.
Yep.
So how was it crossing the border? They asked me 3 questions, I think. They asked me, are you bringing anything to sell? Are you, how long are you planning on staying? That might have been the only 2, and I think where you're from. Those are the 3 questions I asked. And it's pretty funny, it's a small border crossing, but it's for cars. I'm going along the road, and I'm like, well, I guess I just go up to the window. So I walk up with my canoe to the window, and the lady's just like, I've seen this a couple times already this summer, and just like, where are you from, and asked me those questions, and welcome to Canada. Okay, great. You remember a heat wave, most of you, early July. So that hit here. You can kind of see this mountain range here. This was all flat, and then I had to go up 700 feet and down 700 feet to get back to the river I was going to. And I'm pulling 180 pounds. I don't know what the incline was, but I want to say it was something like that for large sections of it with busy cars. And so I experienced heat exhaustion for the first time, which I always wondered what that felt like. Oh, I'm nauseous, and I'm drinking a lot of water, and I'm really hot. I need to find a way to cool down right now. And then I felt fine once I cooled down, but I jumped in the water a lot more after that. Here's a great shot behind the white dot of how steep it is. Upriver. So this is also a very old and well-traveled portage route. Not here exactly, but somewhere in this region. Because this watershed is unique in that it cuts through the Green Mountains of Vermont and goes down to Lake Champlain. and this one goes up to the St. Lawrence. So, and it's fed from over in that direction. And so natives would use this, and white traders, I would assume, for a while, this crossing. It's called the Grand Portage. I know there's a lot of portages named that in the world, but this is the one on this trip. It's the longest official portage. Is that a hand? No, okay. Yeah. Segment 3, Vermont, number 2, and New Hampshire. So you can see I'm not done with upstream travel. Upstream travel is the magenta. Downstream is the green, right in there. Okay. Down to Newport, which I visited with one of you last year. And the checking into the U.S. here is kind of interesting. You pull up to the dock. You can't land before you check in. And there's a big sign on the dock that says customs. And you go up, you land, you go up, and there's a box. You open the box, there's a phone and a screen and 2 buttons. One for suspicious activity and the one for customs. You pick up the phone, you press customs, and then you have, you're shown what the camera sees, a very bad picture of you. And then the person asks you about, you're clearly filling out a form. You know, like, okay, what's your name, what's your passport number, blah, 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 blah. What boat are you, what kind of boat are you using? What's the material? Wood. What's the registration number? I don't have one. Who's the manufacturer? Me? He took all the answers. He didn't give me any problem. Welcome to the U.S. Like, okay, thanks. then I was back in Vermont, and up the Clyde River. The Clyde River has a very different character than all the rest of the rivers that I've been on so far. And this picture, other than the lovely white dot in the middle, you can actually see some detail through there, which is surprising for these guys. But you get the sense of how grown in parts of this river are. More upriver, and you see how thick this line is? That's actually back and forths. I got really tired of doing U-turns after today. And going through here, I think, was where people were like, there was a lot of kayakers. It was very unusual for me to see paddlers on the water, actually, other than myself. And I don't know, it was like, it must have been a local holiday, or maybe it was just Saturday. I don't know what day of the week it was. It might have been on the weekend. Person after person, hey, you're going the wrong way. I'm going to Maine. What? You're going to Maine? Yeah, it's this way. See you later. When you're going upriver and everybody's going downriver, you don't get to have long conversations, but you get to talk to everybody. So this, right here, this tape right here, on the 8th grade trip last year, the 8th graders and I, we paddled from, I think, right about here on the Clyde River through the Fen, which used to be an old lake back in the 1700s. There was a glacial dam there, and then there was an earthquake that shattered the dam, and this whole area drained out. And so now it's in transition back to being forest, but it's currently what's termed an intermediate fen. And so really cool wildlife and stuff happening in there. You can tell it's like going from lake bed to something else right now. So it was cool to do this little section, which I had already done earlier that summer. Okay. And up to Island Pond, Vermont, which is the headwaters of the Clyde, cross over another watershed into the Nulhegan watershed, which flows down into the Connecticut. Beautiful little river, lots of U-turns right in there. I got really good at running beaver dams too. With the pole, oh my gosh, if there's high water, you just push up it or push over it. It's great. Yeah, so in the white dot, there's another one of these that we paddled under. Now, when you get to Island Pond, in the white dot, there's a gap underneath this historic hotel, which the river actually flows under. So you get to paddle under here and you see all these pipes and all these knobs and these joists and things. And down the Nalhegan, got there, it said, lots of intense rapids and technical portages. Yeah, I'll pass, I'll take the 8-mile road. So I took the road. And then onto the Connecticut River. This is where I think I broke in, I guess, to a public library. The door was open. I thought it was Friday. It was actually Saturday. But the door was open and nobody was around. I'm like, this is odd. It's Friday, and then look at the computer. Oh, it's Saturday. So they're closed. Oops. But while I was there, I figured out what was wrong with my camera. So I did a fix of sorts here. So then now pictures will be able to happen a little more frequently. Down the Connecticut River. This is Groveton, New Hampshire. Sorry, right there. And then a portage over onto, what is it, Emerson Bridge Road? Is that the name of that? Yeah. And then started going up the upper Ammonoosuc, a beautiful river. Oh my goodness. This is the Connecticut. I kind of like what the blurry thing did in this, you know? Reminds me of the Delaware River from growing up. Wide and kind of boring. Beautiful, but just not a lot happening. Covered bridge in Groveton. About to put in on the upper Ammonoosuc after my portage. I always wish that I could be in the people's heads that would drive by, you know, especially when it's on the cart and I'm going along. Who is this crazy person? What? They have a boat on wheels? Got a lot of jokes like, it works really well if you put it in the water. And then I come back saying something like, well, you know, it used to really like the water, but had an accident. Now I just take it for walks. So this is the upper Ammonoosuc. More upriver travel. If any of you know Stark, New Hampshire, that's right here. This is a picture in Stark, New Hampshire. This is the Stark Inn Bed and Breakfast, and this is the woman who owns it. And I just had a lovely reconnoiter with them, and just talking about the route and some people who had come through that I've been following that I keep hearing stories about, but I never catch up to. Lovely people. The upper Ammonoosuc. Oh, gorgeous. And this is the day, let me go back to there. This is the day that, does anybody know what river this is? It goes through Errol. It is the Androscoggin. The only part of the, it's part of the small section of the Androscoggin that's in New Hampshire. It starts up, in the Umbagog. The headwaters, I guess, might be, you could say, are in Rangeley, and it curves down into New Hampshire and then back around into Maine. So I could have gotten on this and gone back to Sandy's house, or come down here. So that was kind of cool to be on a familiar river. So this is when I crossed the height of land to get there. There's sunset on the Pontoon Reservoir on the Androscoggin. More upriver time. I'm so excited. Once I get to Maine, there's the line. I will have something like 91% of all my upriver travel done. I won't be doing 12-mile days. I'll be doing like 22-mile days. I had to pace myself here because I was going to get to Errol, and my ride or my resupply was going to be later than I was. So I decided to take it easy. So that's why this is 10 miles. A lot of rapids to go up. A lot of tracking with the ropes and a lot of poling. It's kind of hard to see because it's in the shadow, but this is one setup that I had sometimes, one of my most frequent ones. So I didn't have a tent, I had a tarp with like a mosquito net and a ground cloth. This is one of the simplest setups. You'll see a more extravagant one later. Some pulpwood just in the bottom of the Androscoggin from back when they did the log drives and it sank, and they never recovered. Up to Errol, New Hampshire. More rapids. I met a guy the day before this who said, you know, there was a couple, Scandinavian couple, they're in their 60s or 70s. They came through doing this whole thing the right way, like you are, going upstream where you need to, not just doing the downstream parts. Mm-hmm. And they had a pole and they knew how to use it. They pulled up every single one of those rapids on the Androscoggin. I did too. not an old Scandinavian couple. So they've got me on that, but there was no way I was going to port it around any of them after he said that. Oops, sorry. This is where I stayed in Errol. This is, I think it's, I forget the name of the outfitters, but they're very small but very nice. They're a branch of Saco Bound, which is based, I think, out of Conway. And they're like, yeah, you're a through paddler on the Northern Forest Canoe Trail? Stay here for free, man. Okay, I'll take that. All right, finally we get to Maine, Mainers. Okay, so just as sort of an overview, since some of you might know some of these lakes and some not. Here are the Richardson Lakes, Mooselook-Maguntuk, Rangeley, Flagstaff, Spencer, Atchison Pond, what is it, Big Wood Lake, I think. And then Moosehead is over here. And Chizuncook is here. Katad, I think that's Katad right there, or somewhere over here. I'm a water guy, not a mountain guy. All right, so I left here at 2, but I had a bed for me if I got there that night. This is Ben and Sandy Pearson's camp right here. And so I paddled like you wouldn't believe to get over there. And I pulled it, I ended this portage and it was, sunset was here. And by the time I finished that portage, it was getting pitch black. I knew that I needed to get into the Narrows. So I took a bearing with my compass and then got totally dark. And I was paddling just using the landscape, the hills and the compass, which was, that was great, an opportunity to use that. And I'm coming through here, and I'm like, you know, I think I've almost been to Ben and Sandy's camp, but I haven't really been there. I don't know what it looks like. I remember the name that Ben told me is on a sign for it, Deer Park Lodge. I know there's a big wooden dock, and there's 2 boathouses, and one of them has a ramp. And as I pull into the Narrows, I see way down this really faint light, right? I'm like, huh, maybe that's theirs, I don't know. And I get closer and closer and closer and closer, and I come around the corner and I see that it's a little electric lantern on the post of a large wooden dock with a chair right next to it, like a foldable chair. Nobody's in the chair. I think this has been at Sandy's camp then. So I take the lantern, I get out, and I go up to the house, and you know, it's all dark. It's 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, okay, how will I know it's theirs? If there's a photo, I need a photo. Like, open the door, somebody's home, or not, I don't know. There's no lights on. And I look on the wall, like, oh, okay, yes, here are pictures of people I recognize. And so Ben had been staying up until just before I got there, so he was still awake upstairs. But, and that was lovely. I stayed there for a couple days. There's a picture on Umbagog Lake, if that's how you pronounce that. Ben and Sandy out front. The 3 wood canvas canoes in residence, mine, and then 2 there.
Ezra, at some point, can you say a little bit about the shape of your canoe and why it's appropriate for that kind of stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll say a little bit right now. These are very similar compared to other wood canvas canoes you'll see. I believe both of these are EM Whites, which was a canoe manufacturer, and this borrows a lot from it. One significant difference, though, is you can kind of see how this has a sharp, like it's very sharp on the end, and it flares out, but it's very sharp in the beginning. That makes them very fast, but they cut into waves more than this. This one is slower, but it rides the waves better. So if you won't go as fast, but when you're heavily loaded down, and there's 3-foot waves on some of the lakes up north, and has no problem. Yeah.
How about the bow, the shape of the bow?
Why it's low? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just, it's kind of finding the perfect marriage in between being high enough so that if you do plunge into a wave, you can rise up out of it. But you don't want, if you have it too high, then it's just a sail. So a lot of Old Town wood canvas canoes, you'll see have that recurved end. As far as I can tell, it's really just a decorative thing. There's not a functional purpose to that really. So, but this keeps it low and keeps the weight down. And this is what the guides would use. Yeah. This is the model, by the way, is an Atkinson Traveler. All right. So I stayed there for 3 nights. But it was finally time to get going. This was one of the sorest days of the trip, actually. I think it was because I hung out and let my body relax a little bit, and then all of a sudden it was time to move. Packing up. And Ben is a photographer, and so he took this shot. Great shot. And he also has a drone that he's been experimenting with. So he took this shot.
Oh.
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah. And you can see my weight behind me. And I think that their camp's around the corner over here. So I have to say goodbye to them and their sauna and continue on. So out of Mooselook, Maguntuk into Rangeley. Rangeley is probably the busiest lake I was on. It was, and it was hot. But I had to meet my mom and my friend Matt, because Matt was joining me for a couple days. Nice foggy day, compass came in handy, crossing the lake. A picture of me, I forget the man's name who took this.
Peter?
What is it?
Peter or Alan?
Alan. In Rangeley, waiting for my mom and Matt. There's my mom, resupplying us and adding in seats there and there. And there's Matt and I'm in the back. There's Matt, getting ready to do our little section. I notice, you probably might not, but the boat is much lower in the water now. Okay. So, yes, yellow is wheels, and this was, I think, the previous day was like 3 miles. I think this was like 14, somewhere between 11 and 14 miles along the road. This is Route 16 over to Stratton, because the south branch of the Dead River was dead. And if I wanted to canoe down it, it probably would have been a case of finding a place that there was enough water, putting my canoe in, loading it up, and then picking it up, just taking it right out again, and going through 6 feet of rock, putting it down, and then doing it again. So we just do it. This is what we look like. It was me. It was raining. This was the portage I was most worried about, the wheels holding out, and they did. So that's great. There's Matt. That day we took a little side trip to look at some old growth red pine forest, which doesn't mean that it's virgin pine forest, red pine forest. It just means it was planted 250 years ago by a man by the last name of Eustace, which is right next to, which is basically the town this is in. He's from Norway, Maine, I think. And it rained on us pretty heavily, which was great because we were going to be doing small stream travel the next couple days, which you want water for. This is the other setup that I would do that was a little more extravagant and out of the way, but if I was by myself, I had my little stove here, and I could move this either under the boat or wait to set it up, and I could sit here, have my pot underneath this overhang, have some dry wood, and be sitting on my little seat. So it was a fun little setup. It did take a while to set up though. All right. So, The rest of Flagstaff Lake, nice and windy. Down the Dead River to the confluence with Spencer Stream. Bigelow's. This is coming down the Dead River. Matt has the same shirt as I do. We bought them on a previous adventure to Alaska last summer, or the summer before. Okay. And then up Spencer Stream. What was your question?
Well, I wouldn't even think of Grand Falls. I've always thought it's an amazing place.
It is an amazing place. We got to Grand Falls pretty late in the day, and we're worried about timing. So we did hike back to look at the falls. Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. It was probably the Allagash Falls was good too. It was good. I'd like to go back and spend more time there than the brief time I spent there. And then up Spencer Stream, and then up Little Spencer Stream, which, you know, canoeing up a Little Spencer Stream sort of freaked me out a little bit, just because of the name. Wood canvas boat, you know, more fragile than a lot of others. We have 2 people's worth of gear now. Be a little iffy, but it all turned out okay, as you'll see. Spencer Lake, and then nice long portage to the Moose River. So this is the Moose River. That's Atian Pond. Lovely morning. There's the boat. There's my setup. There's Matt's hammock. Tracking up Spencer Stream. I think we spent half the time out of the boats going up that 10-mile section. Yeah. And I was pulling along while Matt was, you know, behind me a little bit, and all of a sudden the boat stops, and I get that nice tear. It's about this long. It's about 8 inches long. There's the wood underneath, so now the hull is breached. So this isn't going anywhere. Luckily, I brought a patching kit, and we had to wait about an hour or so. I should have waited longer to let it really seal, but he did have a schedule he was trying to keep. And I think it was, Sandy, I think it was Ben that said this to me, but I took it to heart. The most dangerous thing in the backcountry is the schedule. Because you make decisions you wouldn't have made otherwise. That the smart thing is to stay put, but you have to be somewhere, you might go when you really shouldn't. But this turned out fine. Matt was a little bit behind me, and I wanted to make sure he took the right fork, so I left a little flag with an arrow to say, go this way. Pretty proud of it. We didn't need it. He caught up, of course, when I finished making the sign. But Matt and me pulling the boat.
What are your feet?
My shoes are over there. But my feet were sort of standard Keen sandals. That you see a lot of people wearing. He wore Crocs. I'm glad I didn't wear Crocs because there were some more iffier parts with mud and stuff that you'll see later. But he's a Croc guy. So.
When you say he was behind you, was he in a different boat?
No, he was walking behind me. We had left something behind. He had run back to get it. I continued onward because the boat takes a long time. This is Spencer Lake. Beautiful lake. There's Matt taking a turn in the stern. All right, this is my biggest day. Part of that was because half of it I did with a partner. So down the Moose River, beautiful, and some rapids, and then up, there's no current here, that's why it's blue. I dropped him off at Jackman, then down the Moose River, caught a nice big bass, the only sizable fish I caught. I ate the next one on there. And I got to Long Pond right as the sun was setting. And this is a notoriously windy lake. So I took advantage of that, the fact the sun was setting and the wind was dying down, and I paddled all this in just to the stars. There wasn't really a moon out, which was beautiful, and I'm really glad I did it because I've been wanting to have an opportunity to paddle at night. Campsites are not easy to find at night, especially in a riparian ecosystem, or like, you know, silver maples and sort of bottomland environment. I had to bushwhack one, but I'm going back and forth and the water's this deep and I'm cursing and I have to turn on the headlamp to look for fluorescent signs. I finally gave up and just bushwhacked a campsite. Here's some crazy looking rapids that we went down. Didn't touch anything. Attian Falls is what that was. Attian Pond, and Nat and I saying goodbye for now. I took this day a little easy after the 27-mile line. And it was windy on Long Pond, so I'm glad that I went most of the day before, night before. And a nice long portage on Demo Road to avoid some rapids, and then to a pretty campsite on Brass Salt Lake. There's an eagle right there. It's a brown dot, but you know, there it is. There are a lot of eagles on this trip. There's a gauge right here on this rock, which you can't see. And if the water level's like right about here, somewhere around this line, then the water's at a good height to run these rapids. So it was much lower, so I portaged around them. All right, Moosehead Lake. So, how do you say this? Kineo? I don't know. Kineo is the name of it. So there's a mountain right here. A really cool mountain. You'll see a picture of it. But coming down the Moose River and then hugged over here, climbed up it, view from the top, eventually went up here. This was my longest sort of crossing situation where I was far from shore. Of course, everything says don't do that, but it was fine. This was 8 miles. Bouncing along the shore was 10. So I went for 8 miles instead. This is the only other wooden boat I saw. It's covered in fiberglass instead of canvas, but the only other wooden boat I saw. Wooden canoe. I guess I saw a wooden sailboat sometime. So here's Mount Kineo. So this was formed because glaciers coming from the north sort of ramped up it and scraped off the back, making this sheer cliff face over here. And there's some really cool stuff at Mount Kineo, namely this rhyolite, which is an igneous rock, and it's very useful for tool making. And wars actually were fought over this Mount Kineo rhyolite, I believe between the Mohawk and Abenaki. So I brought a piece, 2 pieces, bringing rocks, you know, like baseball sized. I still have it. They're going to live down at the Woodbrook Room, I think, to show people during geology, maybe. So this is the view from Fire Tower at the top. I'm going there that day. And this is right before I start on that big water crossing. I'm going there. Last segment. Moosehead Lake, Chizuncook. This is the Penobscot I go down. Chamberlain, Churchill, and then this is the Allegheny Wilderness Waterway until roughly here, I believe. And then I joined the St. John, right here, I guess. I joined the St. John, and then ended Fort Kent. Penobscot, my first moose sighting of its butt as it walked into the woods because I was coming around the corner singing. I did a lot of singing on this trip. And I stopped by Chizuncook Village, really cool place. Maybe three now. I don't know if he succeeded in staying year-round, but 3 year-round residents live there. A lot of camps. It used to be logging drives used to come through here. Mud puddle. Sometimes this happens. No flats. Yes. A spring. And the Penobscot. West Branch. I started running into camp trips pretty often at this point. Okay, the previous day was to set up for this day, which we'll talk in detail about this part. More lakes, and man, it was windy. I felt kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. I felt like like sledding almost, in that the wind was so strong that all I could really do was line myself up for the chute in between these rocks, or the chute in, line myself up for this passage right here. In fact, once I got out here, the wind was blowing me in the correct direction. So I sat in the back, so the bow was way up and pointing me the right way. I got my book out and read for an hour. I was on the lake. I don't get car sick, so I guess I was fine with the waves. But there were like 2-foot waves going on out there.
Did you have a sail?
Huh?
Did you have a sail?
I did have a cell phone, but it was the last time I got reception was... Oh, a sail.
Yeah.
Sailing, I've only ever really tried sailing with 2 people, because you need somebody to steer and somebody to hold the sail.
Yeah.
So otherwise, you can't do both. I've tried. Okay, so foam just from the wind and the waves.
What were you doing about water?
What was I doing about water? At this point, I'm boiling my water. What I did when I was going through Vermont, where there's a lot of agriculture and the river's kind of gross, I was going through a town almost every day. So I would go to the library and check my email and fill up my water bottle, or go to the post office and get some stamps and use their bathroom. So that's what I was doing about water. So this is one of the lakes. I started getting into areas where the water was down. I'd had good water up until this area. So that's how far the boat had to go out before it could even float. This was all just too shallow. It was like a centimeter deep. Now, on this map, there's this section. This is called the Mud Pond Carry, which I know some of you have heard of anyway. And it's infamous, and I would just like to read you a small excerpts in the guide that I used about, what's this? The Mud Pond Carry, connecting Umbazookas Lake to Mud Pond, consists of a shallow 2 to 3 foot wide stream that you follow the entire way. The mud can be thick and viscous, and you may find yourself sinking up to your calves. At times there is a semblance of a firmer path along the side of the stream, but often it is easier to just remain walking within it. Lace-up boots or shoes are recommended. Crocs or loose sandals can easily get sucked off your feet. The carry is notoriously buggy. Beaver have historically been active in the area just before reaching Mud Pond, and a large pool may be present with thigh-high water. The shallow lake beckons just beyond. In low water, you may need to trudge through the shoreline muck of Mud Pond in order to reach navigable waters. So according to this, sometimes it takes people half a day, sometimes it takes people a whole day. And I'm glad I did it fast, 4 hours I think. I'm glad I did, because there was a camp group coming up right behind me. And the path is like 3 to 4 feet wide with these trees down. I mean, how do you deal with a tree that's this high, right? You prop the canoe up, you go underneath, and then you like shimmy it over. You've got your 90-pound pack on and you're trying to get underneath it. So that's why I read after that for like an hour. I was pooped. All right. Onward and northward to Churchill Dam, where I met my dad. An odd stand of spruce, I think. I don't know if any of you know of the tramway or the locomotives that are in the woods nearby here, between Eagle Lake and Chamberlain Lake. But they used to load up these cars, which are now rotted away, with logs on Eagle Lake and drive them out into Chamberlain Lake and dump them so they could be driven down the other watershed. Because otherwise they'd go north on the Allagash to, the middle of nowhere. They wanted to get them to the mills in Bangor. There's my dad. Normally there's just one of them. So he joined me for most of the rest of the trip. Churchill Dam. Some beautiful lakes in here. This was another favorite. Umsaskus, I think is what it is. This was our rain shelter. Works really well. Easy to do with two, hard to do with one. It rained every day that he was with me, so we got our daily shower. Old dam by where we camped. More downriver. Now, so 4 years ago, well, give me a second, actually. So some of you may know that there's elm trees, large elm trees that survive up here because it's far enough removed from civilization. And so here's one. And they're just such beautiful trees when they get big like this. And so there's a lot of these in the Round Pond area of the Allagash. So some of you may know 4 or 5 years ago I did a bushcraft class up in Aroostook County at the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School. And I was going past this campsite. That's where I learned to canoe and use an axe and things. I'm going past this campsite on Round Pond. I'm like, oh, Novacraft boats. I don't see many people with Novacraft boats. And then, oh, those are wooden paddles. They know what's up. And I turn around as we're passing. Oh, there's some canoe poles. So I turned around because I had a hunch. And sure enough, it was actually the Jack Mountain Bushcraft people out on their canoe expedition semester. So this is Tim Smith, no relation. I got all the looks. So yeah, I was like, is Tim around? And they're like, yeah, sure. So we, talked about the trip and talked about what he's doing and talked about what I'm doing. And it was so cool to see somebody that I know just out of the blue. Cool tree. This is right around the corner from this. It's hard to see, but bull moose was in the river and just sort of looked up. We were about a quarter of a mile away and we just stared at each other as we kept drifting closer. And eventually he just turned around and nonchalantly, like, all right, well, I'm leaving now. I'm out there, off into the woods. Some more downriver.
How are you tracking all it? Is it doing a GPS tracking?
It's been a whole day. How am I tracking this is the question. I spent a whole day with Google Earth because I remembered where I went. So all of these are paths that I made on Google Earth after the fact. And each different color, this is one path, and then I stop the path and save the path, and then do another little path and stop the path and save the path. It took a while. I'm glad you asked. Locomotives in the North Maine woods were eclipsed by these, which are log haulers. This is basically a steam engine, cross between a steam engine and a snowmobile in my mind. You've got the tracks. I think the tracks are back here, and the front sleds or whatever they're called are up here. And this is one that's rotting in the woods. It was very hot, and this was very cold. It was lovely. This is the view from Michaud Farm, the official checking out point of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. And immediately after taking this picture, I left my camera there with the most recent roll of film in it. One advantage of having a film camera, I have all the other rolls, but we recovered it. This is my dad recuperating. It's hard to go from 0 to 60 in canoeing like this. So he did a great job, but he did big dinners. This is my last day with my dad. And we crossed out of the Allagash officially. I think it was here. Down to Allagash Village, and we joined the St. John. The Allagash have been so scratchy. Very shallow water, but the St. John added enough water, and we flew all the way up here to Pelletier's campground, which was where his car was parked. On the way through Allagash Village, we stopped here at Two Rivers Lunch. We had our daily shower. We did some fishing on the St. John. We got unpacked for the last night on the trail. There was a group there, and I asked, "Oh, how long have you been on the trip or whatever?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, teenage boy. We've been out for 10 days." How about you? Well, 42 right now. It's this one. What? Okay. And the last day, up the St. John to Fort Kent, along the international border. me paddling away. And you know, I would have thought the last day would be more momentous or like have some interesting things happen. It was pretty boring, really. You know, it was the current was really fast, so I got there sooner than my dad was expecting. He took the car, went back, got the camera, and then went and did some grocery shopping and met me where I was going to be. He expected it to be like 3 hours early, and I showed up right after he did. So there's Fort Kent. There's the International Bridge, and there's me pulling up. All my stuff, having traveled 715 miles. And there's the sign-in sheet. The earlier ones were taken, so I only have since, I think that's the 13th. This man actually has, this is his third time through paddling the trail. So people do it more than once. There are crazy people like that. But these are the two people from Georgia who I never met, but I've heard several stories about on my trip. I love to get in touch with them. Yeah. That's the end. Yeah, yes.
Can you tell us about what you ate?
What I ate? Yes, I'd love to. So I ate 3 things mostly. I was going to get more extravagant. I was going to pack eggs and, you know, this camping egg container, and I was going to bring a lot of canned fish and like buy vegetables along the way, and all that stuff is so heavy that I got rid of that. And so my staples are really over on that table. You have the pemmican. I'll explain what these are, but the pemmican, the nut mix, chocolate bars, 1 chocolate bar for breakfast every morning, whole one, and then peppermint tea with some dulse seaweed I had as well. And so the pemmican is dried venison from a deer that I got in the last fall, and the other half of it is tallow from the same deer, and then there's some salt in there. And you dry it out and you grind it up, and the fat keeps the meat from going bad. And because you don't cook the meat, it retains a lot more of its nutritional benefits. And the nut mix is kind of a nut, butter, and coconut version of the same thing, with lots of protein powders and all sorts of things. So I did not lose. I don't have much weight to lose, but I didn't lose any weight on this trip. It's pretty common for people doing this sort of thing to lose a lot of weight on this trip. So, yeah. Yeah.
Where would you like strap the pole?
Where would I strap the pole for portaging or for just?
Or, like, where would you have it?
Where would I have it? I can show you. I would have it tucked in if I was paddling, tucked in like this, and I'd be paddling on that side. When I was standing in the boat, I'd just be standing holding it. For portaging, I just carry it. Yeah?
I'm surprised the boat didn't get more beat up going down the rapids. I'm thinking of rapids in a rubber boat, but you had no problem.
Well, so I had 3 tears, and only one of them was in rapids, actually. I was not on this trip to run rapids. There are definitely rapids I avoided, or walked the boat down, or portaged around, because that's why my portage mileage is so high in the official amount. So, yeah, there was some excitement. They hold up pretty well, as long as you know what you're doing. You know, you're going to hit a rock, so you get out of the boat. You know, you don't sit in the boat like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hit this rock, because then the boat goes up, it's lighter, and it behaves a lot better. My dad was freaking out, actually, because when I was with him going down some serious rapids, Chase Rapids, I kept jumping out of the boat. Or I'd jump in and the water was up to here, but it wasn't moving fast. Or it was moving fast, but I knew that there was a shallow part right there. He's like, you were freaking me out, man. For that part, eventually he just got out and walked along the shore. I took the boat down. Yeah?
Is it possible to do the trip in the opposite direction?
Yes, and one man has. And so far that's been recognized. And in his words, Peter McFarland is his name, he did it this summer. He said that he's glad he did it, because he's so far the only person who's ever done it, and he's not planning on doing it again. Because I had more downrivers, than uprivers. I did. And I had prevailing winds coming from the south, coming from the west in my favor. So he was fighting headwinds and going upstream more than I was. But it is certainly possible. And a lot of people, section paddlers, they will just go downstream everything. And they'll do it in sections. So they're doing the section on the Missisquoi in Vermont. They might, one summer they're like, we're going to do the Missisquoi this year, and they go up to the top and go down. I went up, but they will have covered all the parts, but just in different directions, maybe.
Can you say a little bit about what you had in your pack?
Can I say what I had in my pack? Sure. I'm just repeating it for the camera. Yeah. So there's actually a YouTube video on it that you can look up afterward. But it's so I had shelter. So I had a tarp, mosquito net, and sleeping stuff, sleeping bag. And then I had clothes. So I had, warm layers and rain layers. And then I had food and fire stuff for the stove and for building fires. I also brought an axe, which I'm glad I brought. It was the perfect size. Small hatchet, but on a long handle. Because there are some of those, sometimes things were down on portages that other people had to try to struggle over, and I could just chop down. And knife and sharpening stuff for that. I brought first aid kit, an emergency beacon, cell phone, a book to read, lightweight book, and my journal. And that was pretty much it. Everything else sort of fits into those categories. What's next? Maybe the Arthur Trail, the Benedict Arnold Trail. That goes from, it goes up the Kennebec all the way over to Quebec City. It's a little more, I don't know, it'd be interesting. I've always been fascinated with Benedict Arnold, so it'd be cool to do that. Yeah.
What would you change about the equipment you took?
What would I change about the equipment? I would change some of the issues that I had with the finish on the inside of the boat. But in terms of this boat, this was like pretty much the ideal in my mind. It performed very well. I brought mosquito netting, right? I didn't bring no-see-em netting. Yeah, I had some rough nights. The bug shirt was mosquito-proof, or no-see-em-proof, so I would sometimes sleep in the bug shirt in my sleeping bag. That's the one thing I would change. New netting. Where are the bugs the baddest? Well, the bugs weren't the midges. The midges or no-see-ems is really what got on my nerves. I tried to see a pattern with when it was really swampy. The bugs overall really weren't as bad as I was expecting. I think part of it was that it had been up till then it had been a pretty dry summer. But the bug shirt helped immensely. A couple times I wore my leather gloves. I wore them a lot during the day just for sun protection, but then I sometimes had to wear them for bug protection.
How much food would you have with you at one time, and how often did you restock?
10 to 12 days is what I did. There was a section in there that I went 12 days, and I had enough food probably to get me through another day, and that was the day that my resupply person came. Weight-wise, I forget what it comes out to. I think it comes out to about 15 pounds or so. 15 to 20, somewhere in there. Part of the idea with packing this way is I'm packing fats, and fats have much higher calories for the weight than carbohydrates or proteins do. And so that was a way to cut down on the weight as well.
How much does your boat weigh?
How much does the boat weigh? Right now, probably, I just drove it here in the rainy day, but dry at 74. I brought it back from Fort Kent after sitting on top of the car to get some airing, and threw it right on the scale, and it was 92 pounds. So, like mid-90s.
Why would there be a difference?
After driving, well, it's wood.
Yeah.
so it absorbs the water.
Right, okay.
Especially when you capsize and it's just sloshing
Oh.
around in there, and the canvas absorbs water.
And you carried it as well?
Oh yeah, I carried it a total of 13 miles.
Okay.
I wheeled it for 115 miles.
And you had a tumbling as well?
I did have a tumbline, yes, both on the pack and on the canoe. Yeah. Probably just the biggest thing that I learned coming away from this was how freeing it is to only have like 4 things I needed to keep track of: water, food, travel, and sleeping. And, you know, safety and things, but those were the 4 big ones. And as long as every decision I made was measured against those 4 things. And I didn't have a schedule, you know? I was tired, I stopped. The second day I got to the campsite and it was 4 o'clock and I was like, oh, I have plenty of time left in the day and I've gone pretty far already today. Let me just sit down for a little while. Sat down for a little while. I think I'm gonna camp here. I don't wanna get up, do I? But then, you know, and traveling by yourself is so different than traveling with other people. Traveling with other people, you make compromises and you share things. Both of which have their positive and negative sides. You know, you can test, is this really too risky what I'm thinking of with the other person, and they can check you on that. Or they can be like, or you can be ready to go and they're ready to stop. So, yeah, there's pluses and minuses to traveling alone.
What do you think you learned about yourself?
What did I learn about myself? Probably the biggest one was how I really felt, this was coming off of the last school year. Coming off of last school year, I realized that I was overextending myself too much. Not necessarily even in my job, but just in my life, and trying to do too many things. And I was tired on this trip, but I was not rushed. Didn't feel tired in the same way that I felt coming off last school year. And so that's kind of my goal this year, is to try to recreate some of that and slow down instead of rushing. Oh, I need to go get something from my car, going as speed walking. Like, no, stop and just walk to your car. Just go slowly to your car. There's no rush here. There's not, you know. Not having any means of telling time is very nice as well. And I just had to listen to the weather and analyze myself to see what I was ready for. Readjusting to a place with time was odd, especially like for the first week. I was working with my dad outside in a house, and whenever I wondered what time it was, I'd look at the sun. Like, well, there's south, so it's probably like, you know, it's like late afternoon or whatever. And then like, oh, right, clocks. Yeah.
Were there any things that you feared going into the trip?
Yeah. I feared being alone for that long. And in a lot of ways I wasn't, because I spoke with people every day. Sometimes it was just, almost every day, sometimes it was just paddling up past some people fishing and catch anything, you know, where are you going, you know, good luck. I wasn't afraid of just sort of sitting in public spaces and being open to interactions that came my way, because I wasn't in a rush. But that first day, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm paddling away. My parents dropped me off, and I am paddling away. And I am not going to see them for a long time. I'm not going to see anybody that I know, other than Teresa, for like months. A month. Yeah.
Would you ever do the trip again?
I would. I would definitely do it again. I don't know if I would do it by myself again, but I don't know. I'm very glad that I went, and I think I'm so grateful that people have strung this together, and there's resources for this. By the way, if anybody needs to go home, please feel free to exit. I don't want to hold anybody hostage. But what was your question?
So, is this the longest trip you've ever taken?
This is the longest trip I've ever taken, both time-wise and distance-wise. The longest trip I've taken before this was 100 miles in 12 days. This was 743 days. So,
Where was the other trip?
the other trip was in Ontario. I was leading a trip in college. And, yeah, what was I going to say on that?
So you could do it a lot faster if you pushed, but you
The
you
record,
really need a month and a half.
the record for one person, I believe, is 22 days.
20.
The average is 6 to 8 weeks, which is much longer than 22 days. Actually, the man who I said had paddled this 3 times, he's the one who, as I understand it, currently holds that speed record of 22 days. And that's by one person by themselves. I believe the fastest with more than one person in the boat is 3 people in a boat. And I think it took them 21 days and 3 hours or something like that.
Some guys do it on a paddleboard too. I heard.
Really,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That would be rough.
Oh, and some gizmo right on the cord that you had all this gear and
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I can't. Going across Moosehead Lake and Lake Champlain. It's me crazy. Yeah, I think I counted, I think I met, what, 64 people? Something like 64 people that I had an exchange with in which we exchanged names. And so it was nice to get to know New England in this way. I'm on the water, I'm not driving around. Cars are kind of like little teleportation devices in my mind. You get in, sometime later you get out. You're in a new place. You know, you're watching all this stuff happen on the TVs around you, right? This is a totally different thing. I'm coming out of the playground of the Adirondacks into old mill towns of the Saranac Lake, of the Saranac River and the Missisquoi that have converted to dairy farming and aren't doing that well. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so connected. I could get here by, not by walking, but by, my own ability, my own power just to get over to these different places. I saw 2 hands.
Briefly, you said that the Northern Forest Canoe Trail was strung together old
Trading routes.
trading paths, but who put the whole thing together and coined it?
Right, I think it was 4 individuals, and it started about late 90s, early 2000s, and I don't remember any of their names. I spoke with one of them, and they were enthusiasts about these trading routes, and they wanted people to experience them. They didn't necessarily want people to do it all in one shot. That wasn't really the idea initially. I also spoke with a guy who was the first person who did it all the way, who also did it in a wood canvas canoe that he built. That was pretty cool. Donnie Mullen is his name. And he was going off USGS maps and a notebook map that they had drawn. We're going for this waterway and this waterway and this waterway. We're thinking about one of these 2 rivers. You can do either one. So that sounds like a crazy adventure. Oh my God. So some of them are still involved. Some of them have moved on a little bit. Ben Pearson is one of them. Yeah. So I think it was officially christened the whole thing in 2006. She would know better than I would. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.